we're starting a new series. So what we really want to do is help build a bit of the community around consultants. There's some great consultants in town, some really amazing people. And most of the time it's kind of talking about, they're always, even Trudy, we just came from a program where you're really talking to your topic, but you don't really get to know the person. So what we want to do is start once a month just to learn about some amazing consultants. And also selfishly, I'm a consultant also, and I get to learn a lot about how other people do their job well, which is always great to pick up little tips and tricks and things like that. So so thanks for joining us today, Trudy. Trudy, we've known each other for a few years. Just always, I was just saying, I always get inspired when I'm around Trudy, because she always just got full of energy, but she takes that energy really to her consulting practice and works. She works closely with private businesses and corporations and works on optimizing the people and performance. And I think a lot of times around that is about optimizing some very difficult conversations and relationship issues some of them have. And I know she's worked with all kinds of companies and really added value here. And one of the things that I'm off, she has a bio and I'm off script already. But Trudy does a lot of coaching, and she'll probably talk about a bit more. She's a certified mediator, but she also did a course through Royal Roads. So part of our group here, part of her thesis, her master's, she actually used a lot of us as part of her study that she had to do. So, and that was really enjoyable. A lot of us got involved, but it was really around gender and different issues that are in the workplace. So we got to see firsthand some of Trudy's coaching abilities and how she can really bring people together. And I can appreciate that you actually bring a lot of that skills into the companies you work with as well. So there we go. I didn't read it all your bio. Trudy, what did I miss? Actually give us the proper bio of your company and what your company does.
Okay, well, thank you, Ron. And there's no mistakes, right? We just we agreed that we're going to be in flow and have conversations. So what else there is for me to put in is my main work is working with private enterprise who are doing succession and continuity planning. And I don't do anything technical. I deal with the level of communication, the health of the relationships. It can be a very emotional future that they're planning. Entitlement, sibling rivalry, conflict, family conflict that impacts private enterprise. So that is the main work that I do. And Ron was referring to, in 2018, I did a dual track, empowering men and empowering women. And the design of the program was rigorous. I, that year, interviewed 198 men and women. I taught 344 people in that year as part of the training. And it was really to understand the brain wiring differences. And the focus of the program was men and women, and people of all genders can find themselves in the material because it comes down to our brain wiring. So as an example, and then I'll give the floor back to you. The cones in a man's eyes are long and narrow. So really it's track the deer, where the cones in the women's eyes allow for a 45-degree peripheral vision. And it's a function of safety about how we're wired. So it was interesting how all men said that they had been accused of looking at another woman by their lady, because men have to go like this, where sex researchers say that women look at men's bodies as much as men look at women's bodies. And we don't get caught because we've got this 45-degree peripheral vision. So whenever I tell that story, most people can relate to it. And that's just one example of that very rich year. And yes, many of the community members at ReSourceYYC were part of the interviewing process and the learning process. And I was really supported. That's one of the reasons why I love being part of ReSourceYYC, is Ron and Bill and Marlene and the team really have created a community for us who are on our own, being the lone wolf doing our work.
Well, so this is a great start, because if you want to get in some interesting conversations, from her studies. We'll have some great topics to talk about. And it also explains why I'm saying I have a tough time with Zoom because I got to be focused on who's talking, but the chat and everything else, I'm horrible at it. So Marlene is here to help us manage all those other things that I'm pixely focused on the middle of the screen here. So good. So we actually already jumped into all kinds of things here, but actually we should probably back up and just tell us a bit about yourself, Trudy. I mean, who is Trudy?
Yeah. Well, I'm a mom of a 30-year-old and a 27-year-old. So both Robbie and Alicia are in Calgary. You know, I think as parents, for those of us who are parents, a lot of our happiness is directly correlated to how successful our children are being. And they're both launched in their careers. They've, really been able to ride the changes in the world with the pandemic and the economy, with their feet on the ground. So one, that means a lot, right? That my kids are here in Calgary and they're launched and they're dealing with what there is to deal with power. And I am, at the end of October will be the end of my 15th year in business. November 1st is 16 years as an entrepreneur and consultant. And on one hand, it seems like it was such a long time ago. You know, it's been a long 15 years. And on the other hand, it's like a blink of an eye that happened. So it's a really cool celebration. And, I think small businesses, it's around 7 years that they don't make it. I think that's the number. And so I'm well beyond that and feel like I've found my groove for sure.
Perfect. Yeah. And I want to talk a bit about your business actually. And what did you do before you started your own business?
Yeah. So I have a strong sales career. I was in sales with the Dale Carnegie organization, and I was in sales in oil and gas. So that was actually a blind spot for me, starting my own business. I had talked to 12, maybe 15 solopreneurs, and 100% of them said, I hate marketing. I hate sales. Yeah. And I had, a 27-year career as a successful salesperson, like number one, wherever I was, easy. I can remember when I took a job with Dale Carnegie Training, it was straight commission. And my mom was horrified that I left a salary-based job to be a straight commission salesperson. And this was one of the blind spots. I had never considered what would be the difference of selling Dale Carnegie Training or seismic services, because that's what I did in oil and gas, versus selling me as both the deliverer, the promise of my work. And I remember calling a mentor of mine. I was about a year in business for myself, maybe just short of that or just over. And I said, Janice, I'm in trouble. And she goes, what do you mean? And I said, so I'm not picking up the phone to sell myself, to market myself the way that I know is required. Yeah. And I really had launched myself or grounded myself in, I've got a strong sales background. I know how to do this, no problem. So it was a huge discovery for me that I had that blind spot. I'm free of that now. And for anybody who's a new consultant, and maybe you relate to this if you're not a new consultant, it really, I don't know anybody who hasn't gone through that experience. In fact, I say the first 3 years in business for myself, what I spent most of my time doing is confronting every insecurity I had about me. And so if you're a new consultant or you're considering it, one of the things I want to give you today is that's normal. That where we doubt ourselves, where we don't even recognize that perhaps we don't believe in ourselves, that it will get put on the table as you launch a consulting business.
I'm relating.
You relate to that, Ron?
I might just go sit on the couch here and just take a full therapy session here, being a consultant the whole time. and I actually can totally relate. Actually, I could sell someone else better than I can sell myself because you get really self-conscious about it. So, and I will. Actually, you are the perfect. Thank you for being our first one in this series. But actually, you have some great marketing you do around yourself, like very self-affirming and positive. And actually, I enjoy seeing some of your marketing because it's not a hard sell. It's really about someone you'd want to engage with. So good job. Little
Thank
side
you.
note, good job on that.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, and I'm actually going to get even more tips out of this. This is all selfishly about me trying to learn from other consultants. So hope you guys enjoy the conversation too. I wouldn't mind though, actually, there's not many of us and we do want to build a community. So maybe if you guys are okay with it, whoever's open to it, just some introduction, especially if you are another consultant, we'll just do some introductions. I'm going to go around my screen and if you don't want to, don't worry about it. Sue, are you a consultant or do you want to do an introduction?
Yes. I am with her mother, that's Trudy's mom, that said, why are you crazy and taking a job to go to a sole commission position? So I'm an independent sales advisor with Panda Pay, but it doesn't make me any less kind of on my own. I'm paid strictly on commission. I went into this actually not knowing that the money I received during training was actually an advance on future commissions. So I actually haven't received a paycheck and it's been months. So yeah, panic. But the one thing I have going for me is I love this sale. I love what I do. And so as much as a few times I've smacked myself on the head going, what have you done? But it is fabulous. I love it.
That's excellent. And I think liking what you're doing. So it's one thing, if you're going to be a consultant, you better like what you do.
Yeah.
Because not only you have to sell it, people have to believe it, right? And every day you're consulting, you're actually selling your product, right? So
Absolutely.
So that's good. Sounds like you're off to except for the monetary part, you're off to a really good start.
Yes.
but
monetary
I think
part
you might be able to have a lot of relating one way or another. Any startup entrepreneur, nobody gets to talk about the cash flow much, but it's a little grind the first little while. So one way or another. Yeah. So Dana, do you want to do an introduction if you don't mind?
Sure. And I can agree, cash flow can be a subject you don't want to talk about, and that's even after 20 years of consulting. So the first, right up until COVID, all my work with clients was basically referral based, which was great. But as Trudy said, the last year and a half has been extremely difficult trying to sell myself. So I've been working, I started out in the areas of strategic planning and moved into leadership and team development. And now I focus almost exclusively on stress and anxiety and performance with a variety of different clients. And so that's the program that I've worked on developing and trying to reach out to clients in the now virtual world. So it's definitely a challenge to say the least.
Good. So we'll be able to share some tips. Trudy has some great ideas, but on the way there, if there's anything that comes up, feel free to chime in as well. Barry, did you want to do an introduction?
Hey, hi everybody, and I've been to your offices before, and Marlene and I had chatted once before because she's from Venezuela, and the focus of my life since 1991 has been Venezuela. Even though I returned to Canada in 2009, I still had another 5 years of going back and forth because I have two kids who are now 27 and 23 who are stuck in Caracas, unfortunately. And I've been self-employed virtually all my life. And that's a lot longer than I think everybody here except Dana, maybe. Anyway, and I also have a sales and marketing background. I came out of Xerox of Canada back in the late 70s and got into the oil and gas industry by accident. And so it was using those sales skills I learned at Xerox that helped me develop a business in Canada and then the US, because I was at 1981, I was one of the guys that had to leave Calgary and go down to the States selling seismic services, Trudy. So, and then returning to Canada, I ended up still having to go back and forth to Venezuela. So my focus has been on the developing E&P projects in Latin America using the expertise and experience of people in the Canadian industry, service companies here, etc. So I'll stop talking. The reason that I'm sitting in is that I am also at this point in time launching a new strategy, and I'm going online. That's why I got this green screen that's still green and doesn't have pretty things on it. But I'm just looking for ideas and everything. And at some point I was thinking that I would be working out of your offices. Maybe that's going to be the case at some point.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you. Thanks for connecting and being part of the community there. And now Mike and Susan, you don't have a camera, but you're welcome to do a quick introduction if you'd like. And then we'll move on.
Susan said that she doesn't have a microphone on her computer. So Susan's exempt, and I don't know about Mike.
Yeah. I'll try. See, there I am not being able to watch the chat.
It's all good. We've got your back.
Yeah, good. Okay, well, why don't we carry on? And you know what? So I appreciate some of the background as well, because it really helps put some context for all of us there. If some questions come up or good discussion, it'll, and Trudy, and as we talk, you might have already thought of some things that might add value to the conversation. So, Trudy, so first of all, you're a consultant, and I suspect over the years you've had to pivot a bit. Right. So maybe if you don't mind, actually, you even said it, you're really happy where you've landed as a consultant, but a bit of a journey getting there. So maybe just what kind of things as a consultant have you to pivot, and maybe some self, just some really finding out a bit of yourself and how that changed you as a consultant and to where you ended up.
Yeah, thank you. So originally when I started my business, and I knew I was always going to be an entrepreneur, the way that it happened was a little bit 3 to 5 years ahead of, where I had seen myself. And originally what I saw for myself is doing custom training and development in the area of leadership and communication, and specifically communication in corporate Calgary. So that drove me to, I'm a certified executive coach out of Royal Roads University, emotional intelligence, a number of different leadership assessments, and with my background in Dale Carnegie training. So not only was I a salesperson for them, I was a trainer in their fundamental leadership and communication, as well as their sales course. So I'm 3 years in business for myself, and I end up at an event sponsored by the Canadian Association of Family Enterprise. CAFE is the acronym. It's now called Family Enterprise Canada. And I do not know why I signed up. I didn't know anything about family business. I didn't know that they were 80% of our, GDP. Like, I didn't know anything. I really have it today looking back. It was forces at work. And I'm sitting in the audience listening to a 3-generation family speak about the complexities of working together. And the elderly lady says, and now we're undergoing succession planning, and our conflict has gone from 3 to 130 in 30 seconds. And my heart is pounding, and I'm enthralled with their story. And I think to myself, that's what I've been put on the planet to do. But I didn't even know, right, what that was. So anybody I had met, which were 5 people, I asked for a coffee, and I was on an information gathering mission. 2 families hired me. Now, they hired me in the business for leadership development. The majority of my work today is in the family system. So while I do work in the business system, creating strategic planning or structures, job description, roles, most of my work is in the family system, dealing with family dynamics and family communication. Because if the family isn't healthy, then the business is not healthy. So my business in the next year changed from doing the executive coaching and the corporate training to about 85% family business. And from there, when I took the men and women training in 2017-18, again, my intention in doing the training was just simply to make my family business work better and stronger. And what happened was Me Too. And there was a lot of unintended consequences from the Me Too movement. And there was, lots of conversations about the social issue of men protecting themselves, women protecting themselves. And there was a divide happening, and it's a difficult conversation. So I created, out of the gender training, a body of work called Partnership on Purpose. And my intention was to bridge that gap and have leaders understand some of the brain wiring, how we're triggered. And when we're triggered in survival, there is no partnership. We're here to outlast each other. So I had just presented my second workshop, Partnership on Purpose, and then the pandemic hit. And very quickly knew there's no way I'm going to be making any money at this, partly because the world was changed from, in person to virtual, but also Me Too movement is no longer the front and center social issue, right? It's a little bit of what Dana said, right? The anxiety, the mental health concerns that people are dealing with, the transition and how people work together. So the initial onset of the pandemic, where we had to stay at home, was such a gift for me, because there was no one to go out and sell to. And in that 6-week period, I went through 10 years of my family business work. I transcribed it to my new brand. So I went through a new branding, renamed my company, a new branding experience when I launched Partnership on Purpose. So I had all this family business work in the old brand. So the first 6 weeks in the pandemic, I got it transcribed to the new brand, got my website designer to focus on the family business services. And what happened is, with the economy being slower and with, the way of working together, the new business reality changing, more conflict arose because resources are being impacted. So my business really started to flourish again in that family business realm. And that's still 95% of what I do. And sometimes it's in the capacity of a succession coach. And sometimes it's in the capacity of a leadership development or executive coach. And then the facilitator for succession and continuity planning.
So in the nicest way, you thrive on conflict?
Yes. Yes.
Thank
My
goodness.
specialty is.
Thank goodness there's people like you. Though,
Yeah.
So.
I facilitated a couple of weeks ago, six siblings who are owners.
Oh.
They're transitioning to the next generation, where there are 27 cousins, right? And some really big conversations. And, at the end of it, they were saying, wow, like, we're exhausted. And I call it an emotional hangover, because they're talking about things that are difficult for them to talk through, and mostly become missing conversations.
I suspect they avoid, like, literally the things that you have them talk about. They probably avoided for years then.
Yes, in many instances. So it goes one of two ways. The pattern is to avoid. And so there's a whole suite of missing conversations to support them in. Or the other is to, like, be in each other's face where no one is listening, right? And the experience of being dominated, and the experience of being told what to do. And so those are typically the two extremes in the pattern of dealing with conflict.
So I was going to ask you how you differentiate yourself from competitors, but actually I don't even know if do you have competitors? Like, do you have a world of your own there? It doesn't sound like, I mean, clearly with your background, you really have a differentiating skill, but do you have to try and differentiate yourself from competitors?
Yeah, so I'm actually launching a new series this fall called the Family Communication Workshop Series. Yeah. So there are other people who do family governance. There are other people with the designation as that family enterprise advisor who deal with the health of the family dynamics. Mm-hmm. And what I would say, and I've really leveraged, is my specialty is the communication piece. So this family communication workshop series is designed that if you're facilitating the family meetings and you're supporting them on the succession planning, they may get stopped. So bring me in just to do a day or two of communication development, and then I leave. So that is definitely a unique value proposition or advantage that I have, in that I've got that depth and breadth in the area of communication.
So it sounds like part of you don't necessarily, you partner with other consultants, partner with the families, but you don't try to be everything to them.
Right.
If
Not
you
at
could
all.
offer discrete service, right? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Wow.
Yeah. And most of the families that are referred to me, have some kind of significant fracture or issue that they're dealing with, that if they don't get some help in, opening up the lines of communication and altering how they listen to each other. And I actually say how they, really don't listen to each other. That's the first thing I do, is help alter how people listen, or, better said, don't listen. Then the family really is at risk. And so that's part of the work.
As a consultant, you always want to feel like you've made a difference, but I suspect you truly know. Like some companies, you don't really know if you made a difference. At least they don't let you know. But it sounds like you really get to know if you made a difference when you're in there.
Yeah, and it's really privileged work, Ron.
Yeah.
So a family system is a closed system. I've never worked with a family who doesn't love each other, right? Mm-hmm. And there's just lots of hurts and resentments and history that gets in the way of that. So it is such a privilege and an honor for myself to be brought into that system where I say it's where people love the most and are most careless.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it's very fulfilling and it's very privileged work. I do not take it lightly that I get to be with families in dealing with some family history that has caused, some of the isolation and conflict.
So it's probably on that line too. So it can be somewhat emotionally exhausting dealing with clients. A lot of consultants are on their own. I can't even imagine. It might be even more, go to the next level in your world of emotionally exhausting with some of the clients. So how do you deal with that part of it? Because you can't go back to the clients to help you out on that.
Yeah, it actually doesn't impact me the way that you would think.
Oh, okay.
And so it's emotional work, and I have definitely some rituals that I do to prepare and that I come out of. But it is the area that I thrive in. I mean, one of the things that I'm a space for communication. And so there's, people can say things, and I hear this often. I've never been able to say this, right? Or why am I saying this? It's been there for 30 years. So it doesn't impact me the way that, most people imagine. And certainly, 10 years ago, I didn't have some of the rituals that I have today to take care of my emotional well-being. And and I have support systems in place to deal with when it is heavy lifting.
Well, it's interesting you say too, because a lot. So some of the work I do, and I think a lot of people do, is you find you go in there and no matter what the business is, sometimes the first time you're there to communicate well with your client, but it turns out actually you're there to help your client communicate, and so yours is very personal. But I do find a lot of what I do is actually I'm the first person they get to ask some questions to multiple different people and kind of bridge those gaps, right? So it is, and I think that's one of the core parts of consulting, as it is. It's listening, but also helping companies communicate things they don't communicate well on their own, right?
And you as a consultant in your role, and I think this is regardless of industry, you're not in the system that they're in, right? So right there alone, you're more able, right, to have a different perspective, which is really what people need. And so, yes, you are going to hear things as a consultant, and listening is really key. And the other thing that I would say is people behave better when you're in the room. As a neutral, independent consultant,